Basically, this session, as a whole, as I see it, serves as a demonstration of models for this kind of activities that we are planning with the MODEST doctoral training centers. And so we now heard about this National Center of Excellence concept and one example about it in Anna's presentation. And now me and hopefully Timo will present a kind of regional model, the Nordic Center of Excellence. And I will start by introducing you to the Nordic research funding framework, and especially Nordforsk, which is a bureau that is funding Nordic collaborative research. And then I will briefly introduce the Nordic Center of Excellence concept. Timo should tell you about his experience in 2 cases of Nordic Centers of Excellence and the added value that they provide. And then we will switch back to me, and I will just briefly say how these Nordic centers have been and are related to doctoral education. Already in the Moscow training, I was giving a present, or I was giving some insight into the Nordic region framework in research funding and coordination, and I'm basically repeating here that the cooperation between the Nordic countries is the world's oldest regional partnership involving Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, which are the independent Nordic countries, and the 3 autonomous regions, namely Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Åland Islands. And this is often seen as this Norden framework. Here you see the logo, and the region on the map, the green countries here. About the bodies, the decision-making and funding bodies of the Nordic region. On the strategic level, there's the Nordic Council, which consists of 87 elected members representing national parliaments of these 5 countries and 3 autonomous regions. And then there is the executive level, which is the Nordic Council of Ministers, which means that we have ministers of basically each branch. So education, ministers of education have their own meetings, and ministers of defense have their own, and so on, and they have these minister level annual meetings. There's also the highest one is the prime minister's annual meeting. So that's the body that decides about the collaboration and some funding principles and basically a framework for collaboration under the strategy that's formed by the Nordic Council. And it's not a huge funding when we compare, for example, national budgets, but it's notable that it's culture, education, and science that this collaboration is supporting. And the annual budget is roughly 1 billion Danish crowns, which corresponds to about 140 million euros. And this money is distributed through several offices, bureaus, and funding programs. And the main one here, when we are talking about research and doctoral education, is Nordforsk, which is a general research funding organization or framework in the Nordic. Then in education, it's the Nordplus program that is coordinated in bit different way. So Nordforsk has office in one country, whereas Nordforsk program has offices in all the countries. Then there's separately a cultural fund, Nordic Innovation Office, and Nordic Energy Research Bureau. The Innovation Office funding innovation and business collaboration, and Nordic Energy Research funding energy related research and also policy development. But I will go more into detail only for Nordforsk, which is this general science and research and doctoral education funding mechanism in the Nordic. It has not existed for ages. It was established in 2005 with the aim to strengthen Nordic research, and I would say that that's what it has really done. It works under the auspices of the Nordic Council of Ministers, so this executive body, and it is one office. The headquarters located physically in Oslo, with I think they have a staff of about 20 people, and they carry out several types of funding mechanisms. Seems to be that the most popular nowadays is themed research project. So they set the theme and open a call for collaborative funding. But they also have a general funding for international bi- or multilateral projects connecting Nordic countries with other countries. Like they have had several calls for Nordic-Russian collaboration and also Nordic-Baltic collaboration. They also provide funding for Nordic university hubs for the university research and doctoral education. And then they have kind of money-wise, I think this is the biggest effort, the Nordic Centers of Excellence, and connected to that, the so-called top-level research initiative that started some 10 years ago. And now, do we have Timo present here?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so I will stop my slideshow and I give the screen to you for a while. Now you should be able to share your screen, I think.
So I should share my screen. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute.
For the presentation.
Yeah. But my presentation is not open. There was I somehow misunderstood. I thought that they were put together. This my slides with your slides. But I will find it soon.
Yes, I was thinking it's simpler if you change the slides yourself.
Yes. And now. Do you see it? Do you see the slide?
Just put it in the presentation mode so it's bigger. Otherwise, yes.
Okay. Yes. Where is the? There. Yeah. So now there is a slide which is almost white. There is my name and so on. You see it? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so hello everybody. I hope you have had a good day. I haven't been able to follow. I was only right in the beginning, maybe 10 minutes in the meeting, and otherwise I have been booked with some other long meetings. And but I hope that everything has worked well, and also would like to say, refer what Katja mentioned right in the beginning. She showed the photograph of Hytiälä forestry field station, and as you know, we should be there now, but we are not, which is the pity. But I really hope and wish that we are able to visit the place still sometime during the project. So it would be a good place to have a workshop and then also to some fun there together. So let's hope that. But meanwhile, waiting for that, I will show you some slides, and I will show you some practical examples and experiences on the 2 Nordic Center of Excellence. So this NCOF means Nordic Center of Excellence, and they added values. And I show you the experience because we have been involved and also coordinated, I think 6, but I have experience on these 2. And I haven't coordinated any, but I have been the work package leader in 2 of those, and maybe first one also kind of representing kind of Finland, at least informally. And then the first one was already in operation 2003-2007. Katja mentioned that the Nordforsk was established 2005. So there is something maybe wrong now or not?
No, there's nothing wrong. So yes, it's correct that Nordforsk was not existing at that time, and these were the pilot projects of the proposed Nordic Center of Excellence
yes.
project, but that was proposed by the Nordic. What is it? NOSN. It was some sort of predecessor of Nordforsk, but it was more like a committee rather than really funding office.
Yes, and it seems that we got the funding right in the beginning when it was the first wave and kind of a little bit like piloting the whole thing. And the topic was the carbon exchange between ecosystems and atmosphere, and then interactions with the climate system. And as you see, there is this map. So it was also, it had a very strong component of the field measurements in different locations in Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Greenland. And it lasted 5 years, and the total budget was about 2 million euros. And if this sounds a very big number for you, you should recognize that when you divide it by number of years and by number of several institute partners, there is not left on annual basis so much money per partner. So we are talking something like order of magnitude of the salary of the one person over this period. So this is not a kind of a really extremely big amount of money. And it was coordinated by Professor Anders Lindroth from Lund University. And Lund is located there, you know it. And then I don't say more on that. I will show a little bit more on the second Center of Excellence where I had also experience. And that was in operation 6 years in 2010-2015. So at the moment, I'm not involved in any Nordic Center of Excellences at the moment. So this is the last one, ended already 5 years ago. And that was a kind of a continuation of the first one. but there we were also in this defrost process, we were more focusing also kind of permafrost, snow and ice related to processes, which goes under the title of a cryosphere. And then there was also then there's a bigger package of the similar type of research as in the first project, which was the ecosystem climate feedbacks. And also we had a lot of the field kind of data collection on the different locations. So there is a kind of locations, this is the Hyytiälä, so that there is an intensive kind of concentration of the measurements. And then there was some areas which were the broader areas where was done the not so intensive measurements, I mean that instrument-wise, but then with this smaller amount of the observations, instrument-wise, we were able to cover the larger areas. And there was also some measurements also in North America, although the partners couldn't be formally kind of getting funding from this funding instrument. And the coordinator was again from Lund University, Torben Christensen. And if I show you a little bit more, you get the kind of idea of how it was built up and the volume. So I was looking to old files, and I found there the budget 4 million euros, but I'm a little bit suspicious on that, and for that reason I put the question mark. Because the first project was 2 million, and I'm a little bit surprised whether the budget was really doubled. It could be so that this number included also kind of institutional host funding and the practical extra funding of really fresh money from the Nordforsk was the same order as the first project. But never mind, you in a way get to know the rough magnitude, which is the few millions of euros. It was built up on the 9 work packages, and here is also the number of the team leaders or number of the research team. So altogether 18, which was very much biased to males. And then also then the number of the researchers. So you see that altogether we were talking about something like a community of the 60 researchers in this Center of Excellence. And then we had that kind of structure that we had several postdocs in each country and PhD students and also guest professors who were kind of shared. So they did their own work in a way in several countries. It was really the idea that it shouldn't go in a way that everyone get the money and then do something and not maybe collaborating so much. So we really tried to put under the focus the kind of collaboration, which we then were enhancing this kind of number of the joint fellowships. And then besides these, there were also the joint graduate school that was estimated, I don't remember what was the final number, but estimating to generate more than 25 master degrees over this period. So there is also this educational and the training aspect was also very strong there. And this is my last slide. And this is something which then I was thinking myself. I made yesterday this slide, and then I was thinking myself that what were the things which I think was the added values and benefits. And this list came quite from the scratch. So if I was writing this list again, for example, next week, the list could be a little bit different, that something else popped up in my mind, and I was thinking then that maybe this is not so important. But I made this a list quite quickly yesterday. I was thinking 5-10 minutes, and then I wrote it. So it came from the heart, from the scratch. And this is my personal kind of opinion, why this Center of Excellencies, or I would say even similar type of the bigger international projects, why they are important. And the basic thing is that, which is the valid for any kind of project, is that it's a very easy that scientists, when they meet somewhere, you know that they get a lot of good ideas, and they are talking, for example, in sauna, or in the pub in the evening, or a coffee break in the day, and they share the good ideas, and they have a very kind of good plans that, okay, let's start to do that together. Okay, I will send email next week, and so on. Let's talk more. And then nothing happens because people are so busy with all other kind of things. And I have noticed that when you have really the project, that there is a joint funding, there is joint project, there is a proposal, a research plan written together. And if you get this project, it really forces you to work jointly together. So this project in a way work as a tools pushing people to work together, which is very important. Otherwise, it may not happen, although the kind of the goodwill is there. And then the second thing is also that, which is very important for students and postdocs, early career scientists, to tend to have a possibility to work in international research environment, including all research visits, conferences, etc., etc. And then also in these two centers of excellencies, of course, this is not true in all cases, but there we had also the very big component of the joint field measurements, and a kind of we created kind of network of the field sites, and there was a key issue was then the data sharing and joint databases, so that the people are not just individually collecting data and then really kind of keeping it themselves and not sharing it freely. So this is the very, very important point. And also when we organized these conferences, some of them were also open for kind of outsiders. You wouldn't need to be the formal partner. So they also acted some kind of general scientific conferences. And besides that, we also tried to create more collaboration between these other ongoing Center of Excellencies. And then also when you have a work together in that kind of project, it gives you also in a way, enhances your possibility and kind of flexibility to apply funding later on together and really get it. Because when you have already experience on this working together in that earlier project. And also generally, to have the excellent status, it also creates some kind of visibility, which then can open and create some further possibilities to some more funding or whatever. So these were these 6 things mentioned here came to my mind yesterday. There are probably something missing in this list. This could be somehow biased, but this is my own personal view at the moment. So that was my last slide. So I don't know who is chair, but I can ask that. Do you have some questions?
Maybe we do, so that I will give my second part. And
Okay.
and
Fine.
then return to this.
Can I write a question or?
Or is it okay? I have maybe 5 more minutes to present this. This might also clarify some questions, maybe or maybe not. But I guess Timo will also stay online. Okay,
Yeah.
on this slide,
I will.
Good. There were 2 things that I didn't present, but I will start. I will continue from here. So these 2 activities that Nordforsk used to fund research networks and PhD courses, unfortunately, for some reason, these were discontinued, and there haven't been calls at least for 5 years for these activities. But I will mention these research networks. That was quite a useful activity and quite useful funding for seed funding for various kinds of joint research and doctoral education projects, also providing sometimes exit funding for those Nordic centers of excellence that had funding ended. And one very good thing in this funding was that there was lots of liberty in the use of funding, so you could really creatively build up your budget up to roughly 200,000 euros. So these were not huge projects, but also lots of benefits from this. And here are just a few examples from our field. We had a couple of modeling oriented networks with good collaboration across Nordic. There were also Baltic partners in these, and then these are 2 that go more to Timo's area, the Nordflax and Nordfrost projects. Nordflax was, I think it was, Timo can correct if I'm wrong. I think it was sort of, or was it kind of exit funding for the first Center of Excellence?
Yes, it was.
Yes, and the Nordfrost was related to the second one that Timo talked about, and the idea of this was to support doctoral education and to organize joint courses for doctoral students connected to the Center of Excellence. But then about these Centers of Excellence, and now I have here also this money part, and I think this was the range, or is the range that these Nordic Centers of Excellence get funding. Timo showed you that typically these centers are quite large. I mean, they have several, often even more than 10 partners. So the money per partner is not huge, even though the total budget of the center could be up to 6 million euros over 5 years. So these were the pilot. These were really the first ever Nordic Centers of Excellence. Timo talked about the NECC Center. At the same time, we had another one running about biosphere, atmosphere, cloud, climate interactions. And they actually had a joint doctoral program. Then there was the second phase that I call top-level research initiative, TRI. Pretty similar range in the funding per center. And in atmospheric sciences, we had 3. And Timo talked about the defrost. We had, and all of these were connected to Arctic climate research. Another one was cryosphere-atmosphere interactions, and the third one was about Arctic land ice. There was also lots of collaboration between these, and I used to be the education coordinator for the Craig Center of Excellence. And the third stage that we were involved was the NEGI, which means Nordic E-Science Globalization Initiative. There was a center called eSTIC. That was the last one of these that we were involved in, ended a couple of years ago. And it was also about Arctic studies, and it was actually a joint center of these 3 earlier centers about Arctic climate research, but focusing on e-science. Then briefly about the connection to doctoral education. So at least in the case of these centers that we have had or have been part of and have been coordinating, there has been an overall emphasis on educating PhDs. As Timo showed, there was kind of the fraction of the hired staff on this funding was quite largely on doctoral students. These pilot centers, the two of them had a joint graduate doctoral school called Sibakki, and it had its own funding, which was also considerable. It was, I don't remember exactly, but it was several millions of euros. So there were lots of joint PhD courses and cross supervision across universities, and that's when we started the pedagogical workshops for teachers and supervisors that we actually have continued as an annual activity since then. For the later centers, there has been, Timo mentioned that the PhD students and others that were hired by this funding had to work for at least two partners. So there was mandatory mobility for all researchers that received this funding. Okay, to wrap up, so you can think of this Nordic Center of Excellence and these research networks as an example of a funding model, a regional funding model, so not national, not kind of continental or very large scale like the European Union funding, but a regional one. And this funding model has been somewhat successful. And besides that, like really concretely, please remember that Nordforsk, the funding agency, has occasional calls for bi- and multilateral collaboration, which also enables groups from, for example, Russia to collaborate with Nordic universities and research institutes. And as Timo mentioned some added values, like post-joint work that actually may result in good new scientific ideas, international research environment for doctoral students, especially with these centers of excellence that have compulsory mobility, data sharing, open conferences, and visibility for the research groups and research results as a whole. And doctoral education is a big thing in this Nordic research collaboration. So considerable amount of the funding goes to doctoral education. I will show in the end some examples that you can find on the Craig and ESTIC websites. So they have really listed the fellowships, the PhD students and the postdocs that have worked for these centers, and as you can see, there's really, like for example, this student was working for the University of Aarhus in Denmark, University of Lund in Sweden, and the University of California, US, and so on. There are quite a few. Okay, but I think I should end here and see. We don't have really much time for questions, but
yes, there are a few questions. We have, I think, a few minutes. 4 minutes. Could you please check? I think we have already answers on some selected, but not on all of them. There is a long list. So, okay. Can Belarusian partners participate in the Nordforsk funding? I think Belarus is not cannot participate. It's for the Northwest Russia and Baltic states. Is it correct?
Unfortunately, I have noticed that this has become a bit more strict. But I think if you are planning collaborative projects, then I mean if you have a good reasoning for certain international collaboration that reaches out from the Nordic region, then there is a chance to get it funded.
Okay. There is another question related.
But not as a. So I think, but the coordinator always has to be from Nordic countries. But at least in some cases, it's possible to have partnerships outside the Nordic region.
So then there is also a question about, I would like to know from Mariam, do you have joint postdocs? If yes, approximately how long the program can be? And Timo replied already maximum up to 6 years. There is a question from Marina Obuchal. What is the Nordic University Hub? Is it what is connection with the Center of Excellence?
Yes. Let's see. Actually, this Nordic University Hub is a little bit strange for me. I just found it yesterday that there is this funding mechanism, but I didn't actually find any calls related to this. So I cannot. Well, you can look from the Nordforsk website if you find more information. I'm unfortunately not very familiar with this.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. I will try. Yes, I will try.
So there is also a question from Sarah Kitaibekova. She is asking about, do you have possibilities to supervise PhD students from Kazakhstan? Do you organize summer schools in the at the Hutila forestry station for masters or PhD students?
Yeah, we do, and students from all around the world are welcome. So I think this is we're talking about the Kazakhstan. It's I think it is the PX partnership that is the
you are welcome to
context.
subscribe to the PX email list, and then you can get information about different events as well as from the website.
Yes. So please note that this Nordic Centers of Excellence, we are not currently participating in any of those. Of course, we are looking for possibilities in the future. But of course, I mean, it has been the habit that when we are recruiting, it is kind of open for all. So definitely your postdocs are welcome to apply for these positions.
And there is information also on the PX website about courses, and you can also clarify it with the University of Helsinki website as well. Sini, could you clarify what do you mean special agreements for students who study at UHL?
Yes, somebody asked if it's possible for us to supervise students in Kazakhstan, and I know that in Finland and in other European countries we have this thing called Doctoral agreement, which is done for students who have joint supervision. So, for example, if a student, a PhD student studies at the University of Helsinki, he might have one supervisor from the University of Helsinki and then one supervisor from some other university in Europe or in some other countries. And they are always done individually for each PhD student. So I don't know if this is something that is done also in the partner country. But okay. At least we have this thing in Finland and in Europe.